January 6th would prove to be a fateful day for many Capitol protesters as they were sentenced for their just attendance there. However, one J6er is seeing a reversal of fate. Steve Baker is an investigative journalist for Blaze News. And Steve, a federal judge ordered John Strand, a January 6th prisoner, to be released. So before we get into the details of that, can you let us know a little bit more about his story?
Yeah, John Strand is actually one of the more, let's call it infamous stories, certainly one of the more high-profile cases of all of the January 6th defendants. He was a friend and bodyguard of the doctor and attorney we know as Simone Gold, who was the founder of the Frontline, American Doctors. And she was the one that was deplatformed very early from the 2020, COVID lockdowns, and accused of disinformation because she was recommending alternate therapies that were not part of the approved narrative from the administration. And so she was actually a scheduled speaker that day on January 6th. There were licensed events. Many Americans still do not understand that there were 6 legally permitted events scheduled on the Capitol property that day. And she was a scheduled speaker on one of the side stages there, along with some other Congress members as well. Now, the interesting thing about that is that she was escorted over by, her and John Strand were escorted over by the Oath Keepers from the ellipse, from where the rally was taking place that President Trump was speaking at. And those Oath Keepers escorted her and her personal bodyguard, John Strand, over there. By the time they got to the Capitol, everything had gone to hell in a handbasket. And so there was, nothing but chaos by the time they arrived. The breaches had already taken place. John Strand and Simone Gold did not participate in violence. They did not participate in breaching the Capitol building whatsoever. But when the doors opened, they, like so many hundreds and even thousands of others, did in fact go inside peacefully. And she actually decided to deliver her prepared remarks there in the rotunda. She climbed up on the Eisenhower statue with John standing guard beside her. She delivered her remarks there in the great rotunda of the Capitol. And then they peacefully left, just as so many other hundreds and thousands of people did as well. Unfortunately, they were arrested very early on. They were charged not only with a handful of misdemeanors, but both of them were handed that infamous 1512 obstruction of an official proceeding felony, which carried up to 20 years potential imprisonment, 20 years of imprisonment. So what ended up happening is that Simone Gold herself, she ended up taking a plea deal, and she pled down to a single misdemeanor. And for so doing, she was actually sentenced by Judge Christopher Cooper to 60 days in prison. Then John Strand decided that he was not going to take this lying down, that he was going to be a warrior. And despite the odds being, horribly stacked against him, he was going to go to trial. And he did that. He, of course, was convicted on all counts, including the 1512 obstruction charge, the felony. And Judge Cooper sentenced him to 32 months in prison. Now, they committed exactly the same crimes, but because he wasted the government's time and he put them through the hassle of having to prepare for a trial, the difference between the two, Simone got 2 months in prison and he got 32 months in prison for doing exactly the same thing. So that's the basic background of that story. Now what's happening is that because of the Supreme Court's overturning the 1512 obstruction of an official proceeding charge against 355 defendants, him being one of those, Judge Cooper has, and this is a good sign, because the fact that Cooper and some other judges are now releasing these prisoners, they're shortening their sentences or letting them go, or if they haven't gone to trial yet, they're not charging them with this or dropping that charge. These are good signs because, and it's especially a good sign because the Department of Justice has already announced that they want to figure out how to continue with that charge. They feel like they have a little bit of a loophole in the Supreme Court justices' ruling to continue that charge or to even enhance it. And that's a whole other story. But the point being is it appears that the judges are pushing back against the DOJ. Now, the judges are not part of the DOJ. The judges are part of the judiciary branch. DOJ is part of the executive branch. So there seems to be a little bit of pushback, and we'll take this as a good sign.